the first time August Norwood saw her. She was being shoved off a stagecoach in Jerome Junction, Arizona Territory, landing hard in the dust of the main street while the driver tossed her battered carpetbag after her with such force it nearly struck her head. It was the spring of 1878, and the high desert sun beat down mercilessly on the small mining town nestled in the Black Hills, where copper was king and mercy was scarce. August had just come down from the mountains after 3 months of trapping. His buckskin shirt stretched tight across his broad shoulders and chest, his dark hair hanging past his collar, tied back with a leather cord to keep it from his eyes. He stood well over 6 feet tall, his arms thick with muscle from years of living rough in the wilderness, his weathered face sporting several days of dark beard growth. He had been about to enter the general store when he heard the commotion and turned to see the young woman struggle to her knees, then slowly push herself upright, favoring her left leg with an obvious limp that made her progress slow and unsteady. "Good riddance," the stagecoach driver spat, already climbing back onto his seat. "Should have left you in Prescott, you crippled beggar. Told you I did not want your kind on my coach." The woman did not respond, just bent carefully to retrieve her bag, her movements awkward as she tried to balance without putting full weight on her left leg. August felt something tighten in his chest, a hot anger rising that had nothing to do with the Arizona heat. He had seen cruelty before, plenty of it in his 32 years, but something about watching this woman struggle alone in the street while townsfolk gathered to point and whisper made his jaw clench hard. "She limps when she walks," a woman said from the boardwalk, her voice carrying that particular tone of cruel satisfaction some people got from pointing out another's misfortune. "Look at her, poor thing. Probably born wrong," another voice added. "My mama always said such things were a mark of bad blood." August watched as the young woman finally got her bag in hand and began to make her way toward the boardwalk, her limp pronounced with each step. She kept her chin up, though, her face set in an expression of determined dignity despite the dust on her dark blue dress and the obvious exhaustion in her posture. She could not have been more than 22 or 23, with honey-colored hair that had come loose from its pins during her rough treatment, framing a face that was pretty despite its current state of distress. Her eyes, he noticed when she glanced briefly in his direction, were a striking shade of green, like new leaves in spring, and they held a fierce independence that spoke of someone who had learned to survive despite the world's cruelty. Without conscious thought, August found himself walking toward her, his long stride eating up the distance quickly. When he reached her, he deliberately slowed his pace, falling into step beside her, matching her slower, uneven gait without comment. She glanced up at him, surprise flickering across her features, followed quickly by wariness. "I do not need charity," she said, her voice low and slightly breathless from the effort of walking. "Did not figure you did," August replied, keeping his tone easy and non-threatening. "Just heading in the same direction is all." They walked in silence for a few more steps, August keeping his pace matched to hers, ignoring the curious and disapproving stares from the people around them. The woman seemed to be heading for the hotel, or at least that was the direction she was moving, though August suspected she might not have enough money for a room based on the threadbare state of her dress and the way the stagecoach driver had treated her. "Where are you headed?" he asked after a moment, genuinely curious about what had brought her to Jerome Junction and what she planned to do now that she was here. "The hotel," she said, then hesitated. "Or perhaps there is a boarding house that might be more affordable. I am looking for work." August nodded, considering this. Jerome Junction was not the most welcoming town for strangers, especially women on their own, and especially women who were different in any way. The mining camp had grown into a rough town of maybe 500 souls, most of them men who worked the copper mines, with a smattering of business owners, saloon girls, and a few respectable families who tried to bring civilization to the wilderness. It was not an easy place for anyone, but it would be particularly hard for a young woman with a visible disability and no connections. "Name is August Norwood," he offered, figuring introductions were in order if he was going to help her, which he had already decided he was going to do, though he could not have explained why even to himself. "Wilhelmina Vance," she replied after a moment's hesitation. "People call me Willa." "Well, Miss Vance, I have been in these parts long enough to tell you that the hotel is likely too expensive for anything long-term, and the only boarding house is run by Mrs. Hutchins, who is particular about her tenants and might give you trouble on account of." He trailed off, not sure how to phrase it without causing offense. "On account of my leg," Willa finished for him, her voice flat. "You can say it. I am aware of my condition, Mr. Norwood. I have lived with it for 23 years. Was going to say on account of you being a stranger with no references," August corrected gently, though they both knew what he had really meant. "But truth is, you are right about the leg too. People around here can be small-minded about things they do not understand." Willa stopped walking and turned to face him, her green eyes searching his face with an intensity that made August feel suddenly exposed, as if she could see right through all the walls he had built up over years of solitary living in the mountains. "And you?" she asked. "Are you small-minded about things you do not understand?" "I understand plenty," August said quietly. "I understand that a person's worth has nothing to do with how they walk or talk, or what they look like on the outside. I understand that life deals out hard hands to good people sometimes, and that making it harder on them does not make you any better. And I understand that you just traveled a long way to get here, probably left behind everything you knew, and could use someone to point you in the right direction without judgment." Something in Willa's expression softened slightly, though the wariness did not completely leave her eyes. "Why are you helping me?" August considered the question seriously. "Because I have spent most of my life in the wilderness, away from people, and maybe that has made me see things clearer than most. And because watching that driver shove you off his coach made me angry in a way I have not been angry in a long time. Figured the least I could do was walk beside you and make sure you get where you are going safely." "Just walk beside me," Willa repeated, and August heard something in her voice that might have been the beginning of tears, though she blinked rapidly and they did not fall. "That is more than most people have done." They stood there in the street for a moment, the afternoon sun beating down on them, the sounds of the mining town going on around them, and August felt something shift inside him, like a door he had not known was closed suddenly opening just a crack. He had come down from the mountains to trade his furs and buy supplies, planning to head back up into the wilderness within a day or two, as he always did. He was not a man for towns and people and all the complications that came with them. But looking at Willa Vance, with her determined chin and her green eyes that held both vulnerability and strength, he found himself reconsidering his plans. "Come on," he said, gesturing toward the hotel. "Let us see about getting you a room for tonight at least, and then we can figure out what comes next." "I told you, I do not need charity," Willa said, but her voice lacked conviction, and August could see the exhaustion pulling at her features. "It is not charity if you pay me back," August said reasonably. "Consider it a loan you can settle up once you find work." Willa bit her lip, clearly struggling between pride and practicality. Finally, practicality won out and she nodded once, sharp and decisive. "A loan then. I will pay you back every cent." "Never doubted it," August said, and started walking again, keeping his pace slow, and even so Willa could match it without strain. The hotel was called the Copper Crown, a two-story wooden structure that was one of the nicer buildings in Jerome Junction, though that was not saying much. The proprietor was a man named Samuel Griggs, who had a reputation for being fair-minded when it suited his financial interests. August knew him slightly from previous trips down from the mountains, and he hoped that would be enough to secure Willa a room without too much trouble. Griggs looked up from his ledger when they entered, his eyes moving from August to Willa and back again, clearly assessing the situation. "Norwood," he said by way of greeting. "Back from the mountains. Just got in," August confirmed. "Need a room for the lady here. Miss Vance just arrived on the stage and will be staying in Jerome Junction for a while." Griggs' eyes lingered on Willa, taking in her dusty dress and the way she kept weight off her left leg. "That's so. What brings you to our town, Miss Vance?" "I am looking for work," Willa said, her voice steady despite the obvious judgment in Griggs' gaze. "I am a seamstress and have experience with mending, alterations, and creating garments from scratch. I also have some skill with reading and figures if there is need for that." "A seamstress," Griggs said, drawing out the word as if tasting it. "Well, I suppose Martha Colton might have use for help in her dress shop, though I cannot say for certain. As for the room, it is $2 a week, paid in advance, and I expect no trouble from my guests." August pulled out the money before Willa could protest, laying $4 silver on the counter. "2 weeks," he said. "That should give Miss Vance time to find employment and get settled." Griggs took the money and produced a key, though he still looked skeptical. "Room 6, up the stairs and to the left. Breakfast is served at 7 in the dining room, and I expect the room kept clean. No visitors after dark." "Thank you," Willa said quietly, taking the key from him. She turned to August, her expression torn between gratitude and discomfort. "Mr. Norwood, I truly do not know how to thank you. This is far more than I expected from a stranger." "Just August," he said. "And you can thank me by getting some rest and starting fresh tomorrow. I will come by in the morning and take you to see Martha Colton about that seamstress position." "You do not need to do that," Willa protested. "You have already done so much." "I know I do not need to," August said, "but I am going to anyway. Besides, I have nothing else pressing to attend to, and Martha Colton is more likely to give you a fair hearing if you come with a reference, even if it is just from a mountain man who only comes to town a few times a year." Willa studied him for a long moment, and August found himself holding his breath, waiting for her response. Finally, she nodded. "All right then. Thank you, August. I will see you in the morning." She turned to make her way toward the stairs, her limp pronounced after the long walk through town, and August watched her go, noting how she kept her shoulders straight despite the obvious pain and exhaustion. There was something about her that drew him, something beyond simple compassion for someone in a difficult situation. He could not quite name it, but he felt it nonetheless, a pull toward this woman who had literally tumbled into his life just hours ago. "You are taking quite an interest in that girl," Griggs observed once Willa was out of earshot, his tone carefully neutral but his eyes knowing. "She needed help," August said simply. "Seemed like the right thing to do." "The right thing," Griggs repeated, then shrugged. "Well, I suppose we could all stand to do the right thing a bit more often. But be careful, Norwood. People are going to talk, you being seen with her. You know how this town is." "Let them talk," August said, his voice harder than before. "Never paid much mind to gossip before, and I do not plan to start now." He left the hotel and made his way to the livery stable where he had left his horse, a sturdy bay gelding named Buck, who had been his companion through 5 years of mountain living. The horse nickered softly when August approached, and he spent some time brushing him down and making sure he was properly fed and watered before heading to the boarding house where he usually took a room when he was in town. But as he walked through the early evening streets of Jerome Junction, his thoughts kept returning to Willa Vance and the way she had looked when she said, "Just walk beside me," as if that simple act was the greatest kindness anyone had ever shown her. It made August wonder what kind of life she had led before coming here. What had driven her to leave everything behind and come to this rough mining town in the Arizona Territory, where she knew no one and had no guarantee of finding work or acceptance. He found himself lying awake that night in his rented room, listening to the sounds of the town settling down for the evening. The saloons were still going strong, piano music and raucous laughter drifting through the warm night air, but August barely heard it. Instead, he kept seeing Willa's face, the determination in her green eyes, the set of her jaw that said she would survive this no matter what obstacles were thrown in her path. By the time dawn broke over the mountains, painting the sky in shades of pink and gold, August had made a decision. He would not be heading back up into the wilderness in a day or two as originally planned. He would stay in Jerome Junction for a while longer, at least until he was certain that Willa was settled and safe. It was not rational, this protective instinct he felt toward a woman he had only just met, but August had learned long ago to trust his instincts. They had kept him alive through harsh winters and dangerous situations, and they were telling him now that Willa Vance needed someone to stand beside her, to match her pace and make sure she had a fair chance in this unforgiving place. He washed up at the basin in his room, changed into a cleaner shirt, and made his way to the Copper Crown just as the sun was fully rising over the mountains. The dining room was already filling with guests eating breakfast, and August spotted Willa sitting alone at a corner table, her back straight and her hands folded in her lap, as if she were trying to take up as little space as possible. She wore the same dark blue dress from yesterday, now brushed clean of dust, and her honey-colored hair was neatly pinned up, though a few tendrils had escaped to frame her face. August crossed to her table, and Willa looked up at his approach, surprise and something else flickering across her features. "You came," she said, and August heard genuine wonder in her voice, as if she had not really expected him to keep his word. "Said I would," August replied, pulling out a chair and sitting down across from her. "Have you eaten?" "I was waiting," Willa admitted. "I was not certain if you were serious about coming by this morning, and I did not want to miss you if you did." "Well, I am here, so let us eat, and then we will go see Martha Colton about that seamstress position." They shared a simple breakfast of eggs, bacon, and biscuits, and August found himself enjoying the quiet companionship more than he had expected. Willa ate with neat, precise movements, and though she did not say much, there was a comfortable quality to the silence between them that August appreciated. He had never been much for idle chatter, and it seemed Willa was not either. After they finished eating, they made their way out into the morning sun, already warm though it was barely past 7. The dress shop was on the main street, a neat wooden building with a painted sign that read "Colton's Fine Dresses and Alterations" in elegant script. Through the window, August could see bolts of fabric stacked on shelves and a dressmaker's form standing in the corner. Martha Colton was a widow in her early 40s, a practical woman who had built her business through hard work and skill with a needle. She looked up from the counter when August and Willa entered, her sharp eyes taking in everything in a single glance. "August Norwood," she said, her voice friendly but curious. "Did not expect to see you in my shop. Do you need something mended?" "Not for me," August said. "I am here on behalf of Miss Wilhelmina Vance. She just arrived in town yesterday and is looking for work as a seamstress. I told her you might have need of skilled help." Martha's gaze shifted to Willa, assessing but not unkind. "Is that so? What experience do you have, Miss Vance?" Willa stepped forward, and August noticed how she deliberately did not try to hide her limp, instead simply moving at her own pace with quiet dignity. "I have been sewing since I was 6 years old. I can do all manner of mending and alterations, and I have experience creating full garments from pattern to finish. I can work with most fabrics, though I am particularly skilled with fine materials like silk and satin. I also do embroidery and decorative work." "That is an impressive list," Martha said, still assessing. "Where did you learn all this?" "My mother was a seamstress in Philadelphia," Willa said. "She taught me everything she knew before she passed away 3 years ago. Since then, I have been working for a dressmaker in Prescott, but the shop closed last month when the owner decided to move back east. I came to Jerome Junction hoping to find similar work." Martha was quiet for a moment, clearly thinking. Then she said, "I do have need of help, particularly with the alterations. The mining families are starting to settle in more permanently, and the women want nice dresses, which means more business than I can handle alone. But I need to see your work before I can offer you a position. Do you have anything you can show me?" Willa hesitated, then said, "The dress I am wearing, I made it myself. You are welcome to examine the seams and stitching." Martha came around the counter and spent several minutes examining Willa's dress, checking the seams, the way the fabric draped, the evenness of the stitches. August watched as her expression slowly changed from skeptical to impressed. "This is very fine work," Martha said finally, stepping back. "The stitches are small and even, and the fit is excellent despite it being self-made. You clearly know what you are doing, Miss Vance." August saw hope flare in Willa's eyes, quickly tempered by caution. "Does that mean you might have a position for me?" "It means I am willing to give you a trial period," Martha said. "1 week, during which you will work on alterations and smaller projects while I evaluate your skills. If your work is satisfactory, I will offer you a permanent position at fair wages. Does that sound acceptable?" "More than acceptable," Willa said, and August could hear the relief in her voice. "Thank you, Mrs. Colton. You will not regret this." "I am sure I will not," Martha said, her tone warming slightly. "Can you start today?" "I have a stack of mending that needs attention, and it would help me tremendously if you could make a start on it." "I can start right now if you like," Willa said eagerly. Martha nodded. "Excellent. Come with me and I will show you the workroom." As Martha led Willa toward the back of the shop, Willa glanced over her shoulder at August, her green eyes shining with gratitude and something else he could not quite name. He nodded to her, a small gesture of encouragement, and then left the shop, knowing she was in good hands. The next week passed in a way August had not anticipated. He found himself staying in Jerome Junction, telling himself he was just waiting to make sure Willa's trial period went well, that he would head back to the mountains as soon as he knew she was settled. But the truth was, he found reasons to stay. He helped out at the livery stable in exchange for Buck's board, did some repair work for the boarding house owner, and generally made himself useful around town. And every evening, as the sun began to sink toward the western mountains, he found himself walking past the dress shop just as it was closing, timing it so he would be there when Willa emerged for the day. She would be tired. He could see it in the way her limp was more pronounced after hours of sitting and sewing, but her eyes would light up when she saw him waiting, and they would walk together back to the hotel at her pace, August matching his long stride to her slower, uneven gait. They talked as they walked, slowly getting to know each other through those evening conversations. August learned that Willa had grown up in Philadelphia, that her father had been a clerk who died when she was young, that her mother had supported them through her skill with a needle. She told him how she had been born with her left leg shorter than her right, how she had learned early on that the world could be cruel to anyone who was different, but that her mother had taught her to hold her head high and never apologize for something she could not control. She used to say that character is built through adversity, Willa told him one evening as they walked through the dusty streets of Jerome Junction. That the challenges we face either make us bitter or make us better, and the choice is ours to make. Sounds like a wise woman, August said. She was, Willa agreed softly. I miss her every day. After she died, I felt so lost. The dressmaker I worked for in Prescott was kind enough, but it was not the same. And then when she closed the shop, I realized I had nothing keeping me there. No family, no real connections. So I decided to come here to start fresh somewhere new. Why Jerome Junction? August asked, genuinely curious. There are bigger towns, easier places to start over. Willa was quiet for a moment, then said, because I needed somewhere that was as rough as I felt inside. Somewhere that was still becoming what it would be, not already set in stone. I thought maybe in a place like this, I could become something new too. Does that make sense? More than you might think, August said. He understood the need to reinvent yourself, to leave behind what you were and become something different. It was part of why he had chosen the solitary life of a mountain man, why he spent most of his time alone in the wilderness with only Buck for company. In turn, August told Willa about his own past, though he found it harder to put into words. He had grown up on a farm in Missouri, the youngest of 5 sons. His father had been a hard man, quick with his fists and his criticism, never satisfied with anything August did. When August turned 18, he had left home and headed west, drawn by tales of the frontier and the promise of freedom. He had tried his hand at various occupations, prospecting, cattle driving, working as a ranch hand, but nothing had felt right until he discovered the mountains and the life of a trapper. Up there, it is just me and the wilderness, he told Willa. No one to answer to, no expectations except survival. The mountains do not care about your past or judge you for your choices. They just are, and you either learn to live with them or you do not. It sounds lonely, Willa observed, and there was no judgment in her voice, just honest curiosity. It is, August admitted. But I always thought lonely was better than being around people who made you feel small or wrong somehow. Up in the mountains, I can be exactly who I am without anyone telling me I should be different. I understand that more than you know, Willa said quietly, and when August looked at her, he saw recognition in her eyes, the kinship of 2 people who had both learned to protect themselves through distance and solitude. By the end of her trial week, Martha Colton offered Willa a permanent position with wages that were fair and the promise of more responsibility as she proved herself. Willa accepted immediately, and August could see the relief and joy in her face when she told him that evening. I did it, she said, her voice full of wonder. I actually did it. I have a job, a place to live, a chance to build something here. Never doubted you would, August said, and he meant it. There had never been any question in his mind that Willa would succeed. She had the skill and the determination, and despite the way some people in town still stared and whispered when she passed, she had proven herself through her work. They were standing outside the Copper Crown, the evening air warm and pleasant, and August knew he should tell her he was planning to leave, that he would be heading back up into the mountains in a day or 2 now that she was settled. But the words would not come. Instead, he found himself saying, "Would you like to take a walk with me tomorrow? It is Sunday, and Martha said you have the day off. I thought maybe I could show you some of the area around town, the parts that are actually beautiful if you know where to look." Willa's face lit up with a smile that made August's chest tighten in an unfamiliar but not unpleasant way. I would like that very much. So Sunday morning found them walking out of town together, following a narrow trail that led up into the hills above Jerome Junction. August kept his pace slow and easy, and when the terrain got rough, he offered Willa his arm for support, which she took without hesitation or embarrassment. He found he liked the feel of her hand resting on his forearm, the simple physical connection that said she trusted him to help her over the difficult patches. He led her to a spot he had discovered on a previous visit, a small clearing that overlooked the town and the valley beyond, with views that stretched all the way to the distant mountains. Wildflowers dotted the grass, and a small stream bubbled nearby, the sound peaceful and soothing. "Oh," Willa breathed, taking in the view. "This is beautiful. Thought you might like it," August said, feeling absurdly pleased by her reaction. They sat down on a flat rock that was warm from the sun, and for a while they just enjoyed the peaceful quiet, the sense of being apart from the world and its judgments. "August," Willa said after a while, her voice soft but serious. "Can I ask you something?" "Anything," he said. "Why have you stayed?" "In town, I mean. You said you usually only come down from the mountains for a few days to trade and buy supplies, but you have been here for over a week now. Is it because of me?" August considered lying or deflecting, but something about Willa made him want to be honest, to show her the truth even when it made him vulnerable. "Yes," he said simply. "It is because of you." "But why?" Willa asked, turning to look at him fully. "I am grateful, more than I can say, for everything you have done. But I do not understand why you have appointed yourself my protector. You do not know me, August. We are strangers." "We were strangers," August corrected, "but I do not feel like we are any more. And as for why, I have been asking myself the same question. The best answer I can give you is that when I saw you fall in that street and heard those people mocking you, something in me just decided that I could not let you face this alone. And then when I started getting to know you, when I saw your strength and your courage and the way you refuse to let your leg define who you are, I just wanted to stay close, to keep walking beside you." Willa's eyes were bright with unshed tears, and her voice was thick with emotion when she said, "No one has ever wanted to slow down for me before. My whole life, people have either pitied me or been impatient with me, or they just pretended I did not exist. But you, from the very first moment, you just matched my pace like it was the most natural thing in the world. Do you have any idea what that means to me?" "I think I am beginning to," August said softly. He reached out and gently took her hand, his rough, calloused fingers closing around her smaller, more delicate ones. "Willa, I know we have not known each other long, but I feel something when I am with you, something I have never felt before. It is like you see the real me, not the rough mountain man that everyone else sees, but the person underneath. And I think maybe you feel it too." "I do," Willa whispered. "I feel it too. I have been trying not to, trying to tell myself it is just gratitude, but it is more than that. When I see you waiting for me outside the shop each evening, my whole day gets brighter. And when we walk together and talk, I feel like I can be completely myself without fear of judgment. I have never had that with anyone except my mother." August squeezed her hand gently, his heart pounding in his chest in a way that had nothing to do with physical exertion and everything to do with the woman sitting beside him. "I do not have much to offer," he said honestly. "I am not a rich man or an educated man. I live rough most of the year, and I am more comfortable in the wilderness than in civilization. But if you would have me, Willa, I would like to court you properly. I would like to see where this feeling between us leads." "Yes," Willa said without hesitation, her green eyes shining. "Yes, August, I would like that very much." He leaned forward slowly, giving her time to pull away if she wanted, but she did not. Instead, she met him halfway, and when their lips touched, it was soft and sweet and full of promise. August had kissed women before, brief encounters that meant nothing and were quickly forgotten, but this was different. This kiss felt like coming home after a long journey, like finding something precious he had not known he was searching for. When they finally pulled apart, they were both smiling, and August felt lighter than he had in years, as if some weight he had been carrying had suddenly lifted. They spent the rest of the day in that quiet clearing, talking and occasionally kissing, learning about each other in the unhurried way of people who were beginning to fall in love. As the sun started to sink lower in the sky, August reluctantly suggested they head back to town. He helped Willa to her feet and offered her his arm for the walk down the trail. She took it gladly, and August found himself thinking that he could walk like this forever, matching his pace to hers, the rest of the world falling away until there was just the two of them moving through life together. The courtship that followed was unlike anything August had experienced before. He found himself reorganizing his entire life around Willa. He took a job at the livery stable, permanent rather than just helping out, so he would have steady work and a reason to stay in town. He moved from the boarding house to a small cabin on the outskirts of Jerome Junction that he rented with an option to buy, fixing it up and making it livable with the skills he had learned from years of living rough. Every evening, he would meet Willa outside the dress shop, and they would walk together, sometimes just through town, sometimes up into the hills when she was not too tired. On Sundays, which was Willa's only full day off, they would pack a simple lunch and spend the day together, exploring the countryside around Jerome Junction or just sitting in their clearing and talking. August learned everything about Willa during those weeks. He learned that she loved to read, but had few books because they were expensive and hard to come by. So he began trading for books whenever he could, bringing her volumes of poetry and novels that she treasured like gold. He learned that she had a sweet tooth, but rarely indulged because sweets were a luxury she could not afford. So he started bringing her pieces of penny candy from the general store, delighting in the way her face lit up with childlike joy when he presented them to her. He learned that she was afraid of thunderstorms because lightning had struck near their house in Philadelphia when she was a child, and the crack of thunder still made her jump. So during the summer monsoons that rolled through the Arizona territory, bringing dramatic displays of lightning and torrential rain, August would sit with her in the hotel dining room or on the porch of his cabin, holding her hand and distracting her with stories until the storm passed. And he learned that despite everything life had thrown at her, despite all the cruelty and rejection she had faced because of her leg, Willa had not become bitter. She had become kind. She went out of her way to help others, to offer a smile or a kind word to people who needed it. She did not judge people for their circumstances or their pasts. She believed in second chances and the essential goodness of people, even when they sometimes disappointed her. Willa learned about August too. She learned that he was a man of few words but deep feelings, that when he made a commitment, he kept it absolutely. She learned that he had a dry sense of humor that could catch her off guard and make her laugh until her sides hurt. She learned that he was handy with tools and could fix nearly anything, and that he took pride in doing work well, whether it was shoeing a horse or repairing a broken chair. She learned that he loved the mountains with a passion that went beyond simple preference, that being in the wilderness fed something in his soul that nothing else could touch. She learned that he had nightmares sometimes, remnants of a childhood with a violent father, though he tried to hide them from her. And she learned that beneath his rough exterior, August Norwood was one of the gentlest men she had ever known, careful with his strength and tender in ways that took her breath away. The town, of course, noticed their courtship. Some people were supportive, like Martha Colton, who told Willa she thought August was a good man and that Willa deserved happiness. Some were neutral, watching with curiosity but keeping their opinions to themselves. And some were critical, whispering that it was unseemly for a mountain man to court a crippled girl, that they were both beneath the standards of decent society. August heard the whispers, saw the looks, and found that he did not care in the slightest. Let them talk. What did their opinions matter when he had found something real and precious with Willa? What did their judgment mean against the joy he felt when Willa smiled at him, or the contentment he felt when they sat together in comfortable silence? One evening in late August, about 3 months after they had met, August and Willa were sitting on the porch of his cabin, watching the sun set over the mountains. The cabin was small but sturdy, just 2 rooms and a loft, but August had made it comfortable, and Willa had helped by sewing curtains and cushions that added warmth to the simple space. "August," Willa said, her voice thoughtful, "can I ask you something?" "Always," he said, taking her hand in his. "You miss the mountains. I know you have stayed in town because of me, because of us, but do you ever regret it? Do you ever wish you were back up there, free and alone?" August considered the question seriously, wanting to give her an honest answer. "I miss certain things," he admitted. "I miss the quiet sometimes and the simplicity of life up there. I miss waking up to nothing but birdsong and wind in the trees, but regret staying. Never, not for a single moment." "But you gave up so much," Willa protested. "Your whole way of life, your freedom. I worry sometimes that you will wake up one day and resent me for it." "Willa, look at me," August said, waiting until she met his eyes. "I did not give up my freedom when I chose to stay with you. I found a different kind of freedom, the freedom to be fully myself with another person. And yes, I changed my way of living, but people do that when they find something more important than their own comfort. You are more important to me than solitude or independence or anything else I might have had up in those mountains." "I love you," Willa said, the words tumbling out as if she could not hold them back any longer. "I have loved you for weeks now, but I was afraid to say it, afraid it was too soon or that you would not feel the same way." "I love you too," August said, and saying the words out loud felt like stepping off a cliff into open air, terrifying and exhilarating all at once. "I think I started loving you that first day when you told me you did not need charity, when I saw how strong you were despite everything. And I have been falling deeper ever since." They kissed then, long and sweet, and when they finally pulled apart, August knew with absolute certainty what he wanted to do. "Marry me," he said, the words simple and direct. "I know we have not been courting long by most standards, but I also know that I want to spend the rest of my life walking beside you, matching your pace, facing whatever comes together. Marry me, Willa." Willa's eyes filled with tears, but she was smiling, her whole face radiant with joy. "Yes," she said. "Yes, August, I will marry you." They were married 3 weeks later in a simple ceremony at the small church that served Jerome Junction and the surrounding mining camps. Martha Colton stood up with Willa, and August asked the livery owner, a good man named Frank who had become something of a friend, to stand up with him. The ceremony was short and plain, but when August slipped the simple gold band on Willa's finger and the preacher pronounced them husband and wife, August felt something settle deep in his chest, a sense of rightness that went all the way to his bones. After the ceremony, Martha hosted a small celebration at her house, with cake and punch and genuine good wishes from the handful of people who attended. August noticed that many of the townspeople who had whispered and gossiped about their courtship had not come to the wedding, but he did not care. The people who mattered were there, and more importantly, Willa was there, now his wife, smiling at him with such love and happiness that August felt his throat tighten with emotion. That night, August carried Willa over the threshold of their cabin, making her laugh with delight. He had spent the previous week making the place as nice as he could, cleaning thoroughly and even attempting to arrange wildflowers in a jar on the table, though they were already starting to wilt. Willa noticed them immediately and kissed him, telling him they were perfect. Their wedding night was tender and sweet, August careful with Willa, attentive to her comfort and her needs. She was a virgin, which did not surprise him, and he took his time, making sure her first experience was one of pleasure rather than pain. Afterward, they lay together in the narrow bed, Willa's head on August's chest, his arm wrapped around her shoulders, both of them marveling at the fact that they were actually married, that they had found each other against all odds and built something beautiful together. "Are you happy?" August asked softly, his fingers tracing lazy patterns on her shoulder. "Happier than I ever imagined I could be," Willa said. "I used to think that marriage was not for me, that no man would want someone like me. But you never saw my leg as something wrong or shameful. You just saw me." "Because your leg is not who you are," August said. "It is just a part of you, like my past or my preference for mountains over towns. It does not define you any more than those things define me." Willa lifted her head to look at him, her green eyes serious in the dim lamplight. "I want you to know that I understand if you need to go back to the mountains sometimes. I do not expect you to give up that part of yourself completely. If you need to trap or hunt or just be up there for a while, I can manage here on my own." August shook his head. "I have been thinking about that," he said, "and I have decided that I am done with that life. Oh, I will still take you up into the mountains when the weather is good and you feel up to it, because I want to share that part of the world with you. But the long months alone up there, trapping and hunting, that is behind me now. I would rather be here with you building a life together." "What will you do instead?" Willa asked practically. "The livery work is steady, but is it enough to satisfy you?" "I have been talking to Frank about buying into the business," August admitted. "He wants to expand, maybe add a blacksmith shop since the closest one is in Prescott. I have enough saved from my trapping years to invest, and I know enough about horses and metalwork to make it work. It would not be the mountains, but it would be honest work, and it would let me provide for you properly." "For us," Willa corrected softly. "Not just for me. We are partners now, August. We provide for each other." "For us," August agreed, liking the sound of that. The months that followed were busy and full. August did buy into the livery business, and true to his word, he and Frank expanded it to include a blacksmith shop. August discovered he had a talent for metalwork, and he enjoyed the creative challenge of it, the way he could take raw iron and shape it into something useful, and sometimes even beautiful. Willa continued to work at the dress shop, and her skills became well known throughout Jerome Junction and the surrounding area. Women would travel from other mining camps to have Willa create dresses for them or alter garments to fit properly. Martha began to rely on her more and more, eventually making her a partner in the business, which gave Willa a sense of pride and accomplishment that August loved to see. They fell into a comfortable rhythm, their days busy with work but their evenings and Sundays reserved for each other. They would take walks, sometimes through town but often up into the hills, August always matching his pace to Willa's, never hurrying or showing impatience when her legs slowed them down. They would sit on their porch and watch the stars come out, talking about their days or making plans for the future, or sometimes just enjoying the quiet companionship that came from being with someone you loved completely. By the following spring, Willa discovered she was pregnant. She told August on a Sunday morning, shy and hopeful, worried about how he would react. August's response was to sweep her up in his arms, careful of her leg, and spin her around while laughing with pure joy. "A baby," he said, setting her down gently and cradling her face in his hands. "We are going to have a baby. Are you happy?" Willa asked, though she could see the answer in his face. "Happy does not even begin to cover it," August said. "I never thought I would have this, a wife I love, a home, a child on the way. I thought I was meant to be alone, but you changed everything, Willa. You gave me a life I did not even know I wanted." The pregnancy was not easy on Willa. Her leg made carrying the extra weight difficult, and as her belly grew, her limp became more pronounced, the strain on her shorter leg increasing. August worried constantly, fussing over her in a way that made Willa alternately exasperated and touched. He insisted she cut back her hours at the dress shop, and he rearranged their cabin to make things easier for her, bringing in a comfortable chair so she could sit while she worked on sewing projects at home. Martha was understanding and supportive, reducing Willa's workload and telling her that her health and the babies were more important than any dress order. The other women in town, even some who had been cool toward Willa before, warmed to her during her pregnancy, offering advice and help in the way women often do when one of their own is expecting. On a warm October evening in 1879, after a long and difficult labor, Willa gave birth to a healthy baby boy. August, who had stayed by her side throughout the entire ordeal despite the midwife's protests that it was not proper, held his son for the first time and felt tears streaming down his face. "He is perfect," August said, his voice rough with emotion. "Willa, you did it. He is perfect." "What should we name him?" Willa asked, exhausted but happy watching her husband cradle their child with such tenderness. August thought for a moment, then said, "What about James, after your father?" Willa's eyes filled with tears. "James Norwood. I love it." Little James proved to be a good baby, healthy and strong, with his mother's green eyes and his father's dark hair. August was utterly besotted with his son, spending hours just watching him sleep or holding him close. He would walk around the cabin with James in his arms, matching his steps to a slow, careful pace as if he were walking beside Willa, talking to the baby in a low, gentle voice about everything and nothing. Willa would watch them together and feel her heart swell with love for her small family. She had been afraid during her pregnancy that her leg would make her a poor mother, that she would not be able to keep up with a child or protect him properly. But August never let those fears take hold. He was there to help whenever she needed it, but he never made her feel incapable. They were partners in parenting just as they were partners in everything else. As James grew from an infant into a toddler, August and Willa's businesses continued to thrive. The livery and blacksmith shop became the center of activity in Jerome Junction, with August's reputation for honest dealing and quality work spreading throughout the territory. Willa's partnership with Martha made the dress shop one of the most successful businesses in town, with customers coming from as far away as Prescott and even Phoenix. They saved their money carefully, and when James was 3 years old, they were able to buy the cabin they had been renting, along with the land around it. August immediately began planning expansions, wanting to give his family more space and comfort. He added 2 more rooms to the cabin, including a proper bedroom for James and a workroom for Willa where she could sew in comfort. Through it all, August never stopped matching Willa's pace. Even when she was tired or her leg was bothering her more than usual, even when James was fussy and needed attention, August was there, steady and patient, walking beside her through all the challenges that life brought. And Willa, in turn, supported August in all his endeavors, encouraging him when he was unsure, celebrating his successes, and reminding him how much he was loved on the hard days. They took James up into the mountains for the first time when he was 4 years old, carefully planning the trip so that Willa could manage the terrain. August carried his son on his shoulders for the steep parts, and they went slowly, taking frequent breaks, but eventually they made it to the clearing that had become special to both August and Willa, the place where they had first confessed their feelings for each other. "This is where I told your mama I loved her," August told James, who was exploring the wildflowers with the fearless curiosity of a young child. "This is where she agreed to marry me." "Tell him the whole story," Willa said, smiling at her husband. "Tell him how we met." So August told James in simple terms the boy could understand, about how he had first seen Willa being pushed off a stagecoach, about how people had pointed and whispered, and about how he had decided right then to walk beside her, to match her pace and be her friend. "Why did you do that, Papa?" James asked, his young face serious. "Because it was the right thing to do," August said. "And because I saw something special in your mama even then. I saw that she was strong and brave and kind, and I wanted to know her better. Sometimes the best things in life come from making a choice to help someone, even if you are just a stranger." "Mama limps when she walks," James observed with the matter-of-fact honesty of children. "But she is still the best mama in the whole world." "That she is," August agreed, meeting Willa's eyes across the clearing and seeing them bright with happy tears. "And do you know why she is the best mama?" "Why?" James asked. "Because she has the biggest heart of anyone I have ever known. Because she is patient and loving and never gives up, no matter what. And because she taught me that walking slower is not a bad thing, not when you are walking beside someone you love." That evening, as they made their way carefully back down the trail to where they had left their wagon, August carried a tired James in his arms while Willa walked beside them, her hand tucked into the crook of August's elbow. They moved slowly, the three of them, a small family making their way through the gathering dusk, and August thought that he had never been happier in his entire life. 2 years later, Willa gave birth to their second child, a daughter they named Sarah. The delivery was even harder than James had been, and the doctor warned them that Willa should not have any more children, that another pregnancy might be too dangerous. August, who had been terrified throughout the delivery, readily agreed, telling Willa that he would much rather have her than any number of additional children. Sarah was a tiny, delicate baby who looked exactly like Willa, with the same honey-colored hair and green eyes. James, now 6 years old, took his role as big brother very seriously, always wanting to help with the baby, bringing her toys and singing to her when she cried. August watched his children with wonder, marveling at the family he and Willa had created together. The years continued to pass, marked by the everyday joys and challenges of family life. James grew into a kind, thoughtful boy who loved horses and blacksmithing, often helping August in the shop after school. Sarah was quieter than her brother, more like Willa in temperament, with a love for books and sewing that delighted her mother. Through it all, August and Willa's love only deepened. They learned each other's rhythms completely, could communicate with just a glance, could finish each other's sentences. August still walked beside Willa every chance he got, still matched his pace to hers without thought or effort, because it had become as natural to him as breathing. On their 10th wedding anniversary, August surprised Willa by taking her back to the clearing where they had first kissed. The children were staying with Martha Colton for the day, and August had packed a picnic lunch. They sat in their special place, older now, with lines starting to form around their eyes and the occasional gray hair appearing, but still very much in love. "You remember what you said to me that day, the day we met?" Willa asked, leaning against August's shoulder as they looked out over the valley. "I remember every word," August said. "You asked me why I was helping you, and I said it was because it was the right thing to do, but that was only part of the truth. What was the rest?" Willa asked, though she thought she knew. "The rest was that even then, even in that first moment, I felt something for you. A pull, a connection, whatever you want to call it. I knew you were going to be important to me. I just did not know how important." "I felt it too," Willa admitted. "I was so used to people looking at me with pity or disgust, but you just looked at me like I was a person worth knowing. And then, when you walked beside me, when you slowed down without me having to ask, without making me feel like a burden, I knew I was going to fall in love with you." "Best decision I ever made," August said. "Slowing down to walk beside you, it changed my whole life." "It changed mine too," Willa said. "Before you, I thought I would always be alone, always on the outside looking in. But you gave me a place to belong, a family, a home. You gave me everything." "We gave each other everything," August corrected gently. "That is what love is, Willa. Walking together at whatever pace you need, supporting each other through all of it." They sat together in comfortable silence, watching the afternoon sun paint the sky in shades of gold and orange. In the distance, they could see Jerome Junction, the small mining town that had grown and changed over the years but was still home. They could see the shape of their cabin on the outskirts, the livery and blacksmith shop, the dress shop where Willa and Martha had built something lasting. "Are you happy, August?" Willa asked softly. "Truly happy, more than I ever dreamed possible," August said honestly. "I have you, I have our children, I have work I enjoy and a place I belong. What more could any man want? Do you ever think about the mountains, about the life you left behind?" August considered this seriously, as he always did when Willa asked him important questions. "Sometimes," he admitted, "but not with regret. More like remembering an old friend, someone who was important to me once but who I have moved on from. The mountains taught me a lot about myself, about survival and solitude and self-reliance. But you taught me something even more important." "What is that?" Willa asked. "You taught me that we are not meant to walk through life alone. That matching someone else's pace, slowing down to be with them, is not weakness or sacrifice. It is love. And that kind of love is worth more than all the freedom and solitude in the world." Willa turned to look at her husband, this strong, gentle man who had changed her life so completely. "I love you, August Norwood. I will love you until my last breath and beyond. And I love you, Willa Norwood. Always have, always will." They kissed then, long and sweet, the way they had kissed in this same spot 10 years before, when they were just beginning their journey together. And when they finally pulled apart and started the careful walk back down to the wagon, August matching his pace to Willa's uneven gait just as he always had, they were both smiling, their hands linked, walking through life together just as they always would. The years that followed brought their share of challenges. There were droughts that made business slow, winters that were harder than usual, illnesses that swept through the town and touched their family. When James was 12, he broke his arm falling from a horse, and August sat by his bedside through the painful setting and healing, teaching his son about courage and resilience. When Sarah was 8, she caught a fever that left Willa terrified, remembering how she had lost her own mother to illness. But Sarah recovered, and the experience only made them more grateful for each day they had together. Through it all, August and Willa walked together, facing each challenge as partners. When Willa's leg bothered her more as she aged, making walking increasingly difficult, August was there to support her, to help her up the stairs or across uneven ground, never impatient, never making her feel like a burden. When August's back started to ache from years of heavy work at the blacksmith shop, Willa was there to rub liniment into the sore muscles and encourage him to take breaks, reminding him that he did not have to prove anything to anyone. They watched their children grow into fine young adults. James took over more and more of the blacksmith work, developing a talent for creating decorative ironwork that brought customers from all over the territory. He fell in love with a kind young woman named Emma, who worked as a teacher in Jerome Junction, and August and Willa gave them their blessing gladly, seeing how happy James was. Sarah, true to her nature, became Martha Colton's apprentice at the dress shop, showing the same skill with a needle that her mother had. She was quieter than her brother, more content with books and sewing than with social gatherings, but she had a small circle of close friends and seemed happy with her life. On August and Willa's 20th wedding anniversary, James and Sarah surprised their parents by organizing a celebration at the church. It seemed like the entire town turned out, a testament to how much respect and affection August and Willa had earned over the years. Martha Colton gave a speech about how Willa had become like a daughter to her, about her skill and kindness and determination. Frank from the livery spoke about August's integrity and work ethic, about how he had become one of the pillars of the community. But the moment that touched August and Willa most deeply came when James stood up to speak. Their son, now a man of 21, tall and strong like his father, looked at his parents with obvious emotion. "Everyone here knows my mother walks with a limp," James said, his voice carrying through the quiet church. "When I was a little boy, I did not understand why some people stared or whispered about it, but my father explained it to me in a way I have never forgotten. He told me that the measure of a person is not how they look or how they walk, but what is in their heart. And he taught me, by example, what it means to truly love someone." James paused, his eyes glistening with tears. "All my life, I have watched my father slow down to walk beside my mother. I have watched him match her pace without hesitation, without complaint, with nothing but love and patience. And I have learned that real strength is not about being the biggest or the fastest or the most powerful. Real strength is about choosing to walk beside someone every single day, no matter what pace they set. That is the kind of man my father is, and that is the kind of man I hope to be." There was not a dry eye in the church by the time James finished speaking. August, who rarely showed emotion in public, found tears streaming down his face as he pulled his son into a tight embrace. Willa was openly crying, reaching for Sarah, who hugged her mother close. That night, back in their cabin with their children gone to their own homes, August and Willa sat together on the porch they had built so many years ago. The night was warm and clear, stars scattered across the sky like diamonds on black velvet. 20 years, Willa marveled. "It seems like yesterday that you were waiting for me outside the dress shop for the first time, and yet it also feels like we have been together forever." "Time is strange like that," August agreed. "The days go slow but the years go fast, but I would not change a single moment, Willa. Not one." "Not even the hard parts," Willa teased gently. "The droughts and the illnesses and my stubborn insistence on doing things myself, even when I should ask for help. Especially not those parts," August said firmly. "Those are the parts that made us stronger, that taught us how to rely on each other. Every challenge we faced together just proved that we could handle whatever life threw at us, as long as we were together." They sat in companionable silence for a while, each lost in their own thoughts but comfortable in each other's presence. Finally, Willa said, "August, can I tell you something I have never told anyone?" Always, he said, giving her his full attention. When I first came to Jerome Junction, when I was on that stagecoach, and knew I was going to a place where I had no connections and no guarantee of success, I was terrified, but I was also determined. I promised myself that I would survive, that I would make a life for myself no matter how hard it was, even if it meant being alone forever. And then you came along and changed everything. Willa paused, gathering her thoughts. You know how you said you felt a pull toward me from the very first moment. I felt it too, but I fought against it so hard. I told myself not to hope, not to dream, because hope and dreams just led to disappointment. But you were so patient, so steady, so absolutely certain in your feelings for me that you broke through all my defenses. You made me believe that I deserved love, that I was not too broken or too different to have a real partnership with someone. You were never broken, August said fiercely. Different, yes, but different is not broken, Willa. It is just different, and you were never too anything for love. If anything, I was the one who did not deserve you. We deserved each other, Willa said firmly. That is what I have come to understand over these 20 years. We both had wounds from our pasts, both had reasons to keep ourselves apart from others. But we found each other, and we chose to trust each other, and we built something beautiful together. And that is what I want our children to understand, what I want Sarah especially to understand as she grows older and thinks about her own future. What do you want them to understand? August asked. That love is not about finding someone perfect. It is about finding someone who sees your imperfections and loves you anyway. Someone who will slow down to walk beside you when the path gets rough. Someone who will stay through all of it, because staying is a choice they make every single day. August pulled Willa close, wrapping his arm around her shoulders and feeling her settle against him with the ease of long familiarity. You are right, he said, and I hope our children find what we have. I hope they find partners who will walk beside them through life, no matter what pace they need to set. As they sat together under the stars, August reflected on how much his life had changed since that hot spring day in 1878 when he had seen a young woman shoved off a stagecoach. He had been a solitary man then, convinced that he was meant to live alone in the mountains, that connection and community were not for him. But Willa had shown him a different path, one that led to family and love, and a sense of belonging he had never imagined possible. He thought about all the times he had slowed his pace to match hers, all the times they had walked together through Jerome Junction or up into the hills or just around their own property. Those walks had become a metaphor for their entire marriage, a physical manifestation of what it meant to truly partner with someone. It was not about one person giving up everything for the other. It was about both people adjusting, compromising, supporting each other until they found a rhythm that worked for both of them. And in slowing down, in matching Willa's pace, August had not lost anything. He had gained everything that mattered. He had gained a partner who understood him completely, children who made him proud every day, a community where he belonged, and a sense of peace that no amount of mountain solitude had ever given him. The years continued to pass, each one bringing its own joys and sorrows. Martha Colton passed away when August and Willa were in their early 50s, leaving the dress shop entirely to Willa and Sarah. It was a bittersweet moment, honoring a woman who had been so important to them while also taking on the full responsibility of the business. But mother and daughter rose to the challenge, expanding the shop and training new seamstresses, building on the foundation Martha had laid. Frank retired from the livery business around the same time, selling his share to August and James, who renamed it Norwood and Son. The blacksmith portion of the business had grown to be even more profitable than the livery work, with James's decorative ironwork in high demand. Father and son worked side by side every day, and August took great pride in seeing his son's skill and success. James married his Emma in a beautiful ceremony that reminded August of his own wedding, simple and heartfelt and full of genuine love. They had 3 children in quick succession, 2 boys and a girl, and August found that being a grandfather brought him a whole new level of joy. He would sit for hours with his grandchildren, telling them stories about the mountains and the wilderness, about meeting their grandmother and falling in love. Sarah, to no one's surprise, married a quiet, bookish man named Thomas who worked as a clerk and shared her love of reading. Their wedding was smaller than James's, just family and close friends, but no less meaningful. They had 1 daughter, a serious little girl with Willa's green eyes and Sarah's contemplative nature, who August adored. Throughout it all, through the weddings and births, the business successes and the inevitable losses that came with aging, August and Willa remained each other's constant. They still took walks together whenever Willa felt up to it, though they moved more slowly now, both of them feeling the weight of years. August's dark hair had gone completely gray, though he still wore it long, tied back as he always had. His body was still strong from years of physical work, though he tired more easily than he once had. Willa's hair had also gone gray, though it still held hints of the honey color it had been in her youth. Her limp was more pronounced now, arthritis settling into the joints of her shorter leg, making movements sometimes painful. But she bore it with the same quiet dignity she had always shown, never complaining, always finding ways to adapt and continue doing the things she loved. On their 30th wedding anniversary, their children and grandchildren organized another celebration, this one at August and Willa's home. The cabin had been expanded several times over the years and was now a comfortable house with enough room for the whole family to gather. They ate a huge meal prepared by all the women of the family working together, and afterward they sat on the expanded porch while the grandchildren played in the yard. 30 years, James said, shaking his head in wonder. I can barely imagine being married for 30 years. How have you 2 made it work for so long? August and Willa exchanged a look, one of those wordless communications that came from decades of partnership. Then August said, Your mother and I learned early on that marriage is not about grand gestures or dramatic declarations. It is about the everyday choices you make, the small acts of kindness and consideration that add up over time. It is about walking beside each other, Willa added, her hand finding August's and squeezing gently. About matching your pace to your partners, especially when they are struggling. About choosing to stay, even when things get hard. And they do get hard, August continued. Life brings challenges that you cannot predict or prevent. But if you face them together, if you support each other through the rough patches, you come out stronger on the other side. Their daughter Sarah spoke up then, her voice thoughtful. I remember when I was little, maybe 7 or 8 years old, and some of the other children at school were making fun of Mama's limp. I came home crying, so angry at them for being cruel, but also confused because I did not understand why anyone would care about something like that. I remember that day, Willa said softly. Papa, you sat me down and explained that some people are afraid of anything that is different from them, and that fear makes them mean. But you also said that the people who matter, the people worth knowing, are the ones who look past the surface to see who someone really is. And you told me to watch how you treated Mama, to see that her limp did not matter to you at all, except as a reminder to slow down and make sure you were walking together. Sarah's eyes were shining with tears. That lesson has stayed with me my whole life. It taught me to look for the kind of love that is patient and steady, not the flashy romantic gestures that look good on the surface, but do not mean much underneath. It taught me to look for someone like Thomas, someone who would walk beside me through life no matter what challenges we faced. August felt emotion welling up in his chest as he listened to his daughter. To know that his example had shaped his children's understanding of love, that they had learned from watching him and Willa, was perhaps the greatest accomplishment of his life. As the sun began to set, and the evening air grew cool, the family slowly dispersed. Grandchildren reluctantly pulled away from their games, sons and daughters gathering their things and preparing to head to their own homes. August and Willa stood on the porch, waving goodbye, then settled into their favorite chairs to watch the last of the daylight fade. "We did all right, did we not?" Willa asked, her voice tired but content. "We did better than all right," August said firmly. "We built something real and lasting, Willa. A family, a legacy, a love that I hope will inspire our children and grandchildren for generations to come." "I hope so too," Willa said. "I hope they remember that real love is not about perfection. It is about acceptance and patience and choosing each other every single day." They sat in comfortable silence as darkness fell, and the stars began to appear, the same stars they had watched together for 30 years. August thought about that young mountain man who had come down from the wilderness, expecting to spend a few days in town, and then return to his solitary life. That man would not have recognized the person August had become, this family man with a wife he adored, children who made him proud, grandchildren who brought him joy, and a place in the community he could never have imagined back then. But he would not trade who he had become for anything. Every choice he had made since seeing Willa tumble off that stagecoach had led him to this moment, to this life of quiet contentment and deep love. And it had all started with the simple decision to slow down, to walk beside someone who moved at a different pace, to see that difference not as a flaw but as an opportunity to practice patience and kindness. The following years brought the inevitable changes that came with aging. August finally retired from active work at the blacksmith shop when he was 60, though he still went in most days to advise James and his grandsons, who were now learning the trade. Willa had to stop working at the dress shop when she was 58, her leg finally giving her too much trouble to stand for long periods. But she continued to sew at home, creating beautiful quilts and teaching her granddaughters the skills her mother had taught her so many years ago in Philadelphia. They spent more time together in those years than they had since the early days of their marriage, and August treasured every moment. They would sit on their porch for hours, talking or reading or just enjoying each other's company. They took slow walks around their property, August always matching Willa's increasingly difficult pace, sometimes with his arm around her waist to help support her weight. Their friends and peers began to pass away, one by one. Frank from the livery died peacefully in his sleep at 72. Samuel Griggs from the hotel succumbed to heart failure at 68. Each loss reminded August and Willa of their own mortality, but it also made them more grateful for the time they still had together. When August was 65 and Willa was 63, she fell ill with a persistent cough that would not go away. The doctor diagnosed pneumonia and prescribed rest and medication, but progress was slow. August barely left her side during those weeks, sleeping in a chair by their bed, helping her sit up to take medicine and sips of water, holding her hand when the coughing fits left her weak and exhausted. One night, when Willa seemed particularly weak, she whispered, "August, I need you to promise me something." "Anything," August said, his throat tight with fear. "If I do not recover from this, I need you to promise me you will not shut yourself away. That you will stay close to James and Sarah and the grandchildren. That you will keep walking, even if you have to walk alone, You are going to recover, August said fiercely. You are the strongest person I know, Willa. You have survived everything life has thrown at you, and you are going to survive this too. But if I do not, Willa persisted, her green eyes serious in her pale face. Promise me. I promise, August said, though the words felt like they were being torn from his chest. But you are going to get better, and we are going to have many more years together. Whether it was sheer determination on Willa's part or August's fierce belief in her strength, Willa slowly began to improve. The coughing eased, her breathing became less labored, and color started to return to her cheeks. By the time spring arrived, she was back on her feet, though weaker than before and moving even more slowly. But they were together, and that was all that mattered. They celebrated Willa's recovery with a quiet family dinner, surrounded by their children and grandchildren, grateful for every moment they had been given. On their 40th wedding anniversary, August and Willa did not have a big celebration. Instead, August hired a wagon with good springs to cushion the ride and took Willa back to the clearing that had always been their special place. It took them much longer to make the trip than it had in their younger years. August had to help Willa into the wagon and then out again, and the walk from where they left the wagon to the clearing itself was slow and careful, with frequent stops for Willa to rest. But finally, they made it to their spot, and they sat together on the flat rock where they had first confessed their love all those decades ago. The view was the same, the mountains still majestic in the distance, the valley spread out below them, wildflowers dotting the grass. But August and Willa were different, their bodies marked by age and the passage of time, their faces lined with years of joy and sorrow, triumph and loss. 40 years, Willa said, her voice soft with wonder. Sometimes it feels like it has been forever, and sometimes it feels like it was just yesterday that you walked beside me through the streets of Jerome Junction for the first time. I remember every detail of that day, August said. The way the sun beat down on us, the dust in the street, the way people stared and whispered. And I remember thinking that I would do whatever it took to make sure you were safe and had a chance to succeed here. You did more than that, Willa said. You gave me a life beyond anything I ever dreamed of. You gave me love and partnership and a family and a home. You gave me 40 years of walking beside me, August, of matching my pace and never making me feel like I was holding you back. You never held me back, August said firmly. If anything, you taught me the true meaning of partnership. You showed me that slowing down is not a sacrifice, it is an act of love. And that walking beside someone, really being present with them, is more valuable than getting anywhere quickly. They sat together in the warm spring sunlight, two people who had built a lifetime of love and companionship, who had faced every challenge together and come through stronger for it. August thought about the mountain man he had been all those years ago, so certain that solitude was his destiny, so convinced that he was not meant for the complications of human connection. How wrong he had been. How grateful he was that he had been wrong. Willa, he said, taking her hand in his, feeling the familiar warmth of her palm against his. I want you to know that these 40 years with you have been the greatest blessing of my life. You took a lonely, rough mountain man and showed him what it means to truly live. You gave me purpose and love and a reason to be a better person every single day. Willa's eyes were bright with tears. And you took a woman who thought she was too broken for love and showed her that she was worthy of everything she had ever wanted. You never saw my limp as something to overcome or fix. You just saw me, all of me, and loved me completely. They kissed then, soft and sweet, a kiss that held 40 years of love and commitment, of choosing each other through easy times and hard, of walking together through life no matter what pace circumstances demanded. When they finally pulled apart, August said, "Thank you for letting me walk beside you, Willa. Thank you for matching my pace too, for being patient with me when I was stubborn or when I struggled to express what I was feeling. Thank you for these 40 years and for however many more we have left." "Thank you for slowing down," Willa whispered. "Thank you for seeing me, really seeing me from that very first day. Thank you for building this beautiful life with me." They sat together until the sun began to sink lower in the sky. And then August carefully helped Willa to her feet, and they began the slow journey back to the wagon. Their pace was measured and unhurried. Two people who had learned long ago that the destination mattered far less than the journey, that walking together was more important than walking fast. By the time they made it home, both were exhausted, but it was the good kind of tired that came from doing something meaningful. They sat on their porch as evening fell, watching their grandchildren playing in the yard, James and Emma's youngest boy running circles around Sarah's daughter, their laughter filling the air. "We made all this," Willa said, gesturing to the scene before them. "From that one moment in the street when you decided to walk beside me, we created all of this. A family, a legacy, a love that will outlive us both." "The best decision I ever made," August said, pulling her close. "Slowing down to match your pace, it changed everything." As the stars began to appear in the darkening sky and their family slowly dispersed to their own homes, August and Willa sat together in the comfortable silence of long companionship. They had lived a good life together, filled with more love and happiness than either of them had ever expected to find. They had faced challenges and overcome them, celebrated victories and learned from defeats, and through it all they had walked together, their paces matched, their commitment unwavering. And as August looked at his wife, still beautiful to him after 40 years, her gray hair catching the last light of day, her green eyes still bright with intelligence and love, he knew that he would make the same choice again and again in every lifetime. He would always slow his pace. He would always walk beside her, because that was what love meant. Not grand gestures or dramatic pronouncements, but the quiet, steady choice to stay beside your partner, no matter what pace life demanded, no matter what challenges arose. They had walked together for 40 years, and they would walk together for however many years remained. And when one of them could walk no more, the other would hold their hand and remember every step of the journey they had shared, every moment of love and laughter and partnership that had made their life together so rich and meaningful. As night fully fell and they finally rose to go inside, August offered Willa his arm, and she took it with the ease of long habit. They walked slowly to the door of their home, moving together at the pace they had perfected over 4 decades. Two people who had found in each other the greatest gift of all, someone to walk beside, through all the days of their lives until the very end. And in the years that remained, however many there would be, they would continue to walk together, August always matching Willa's pace, Willa always grateful for his steady presence beside her, both of them knowing that they had found something precious and rare, a love that transcended circumstance and challenged conventional wisdom, a love built on the simple but profound choice to walk together, no matter what.